Where have we started? I've forgotten how we start.
Oh,
It's been a minute.
do you know what? It has been a minute since you and I've been together.
Yeah, 100%.
And since our last podcast, so it has been a little bit of a while.
I should start with an apology then, I suppose.
Oh, well,
Sorry
yeah.
for leaving you on your own last time. It was very unfortunate, but I am back now, and I'll be back for the foreseeable. You
He's
did a
back.
wonderful job without me, and you and Joe were fantastic. So thank you for holding the fort.
Thank you for coming back.
That's
Do you know what?
okay.
Jo was amazing though, wasn't she?
She was amazing.
Like, just being able to kind of listen about her story and about everything that they do in fostering. It was amazing. But you were missed.
Well, thank you ever so much. It was lovely to see all the nice feedback on the podcast as well. So thank you for all the lovely comments about Joe and everything. So
Yeah.
that was great. But looking forward, who have we got today?
So this is going to be really exciting because we have got Linda joining us from Gloucester. And we're going to be spending time today talking about, obviously, your work in fostering as a foster carer, but also thinking about caring for teenagers.
Yes.
And we were talking on our journey.
yeah.
My passion is teenagers.
Yes. Oh, so fostering, when did you kind of first join? When did you first start fostering?
I started fostering 15 years ago and started with sort of full-time foster children. But I was also working at the time and had a teenage daughter.
So what did you do for work? What made you think about it?
So I'm a teacher.
Cool.
I still do teach, although I'm supposed to have retired. I still teach 1 day a week.
Yeah.
So I was teaching, and the nut of why I started was a girl who came to me at the end of a lesson on a Friday. It was a bank holiday weekend, and she said she thought she was going to be kicked out of home over the weekend, didn't know where to go, and I didn't know how to help her. And in the back of my mind, I'd been thinking about fostering, and I thought, if I was a foster carer, I would be able to do something for this child. And that's really what spurred me on to start looking into fostering.
Oh, no, that's so lovely. And that is something we see quite a lot. We see a lot of teachers and educators and all sort of ages and professions who actually see the experience they have in school and with pupils and other children around the school. Actually, that does open their eyes to quite a lot of different things, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think, there's that skill, isn't there, within teaching, the skill within kind of, looking after teenagers, after children, and being able to bring those skills into kind of fostering.
Yes, absolutely.
And interestingly, so we talk a lot. I've known you for a while. We've done lots of this together. I'm sure you've seen Linda on other opportunities. If you see my emails, there's Linda. You are one of my favourite foster carers. That is a bias, but it's fine.
Yeah, I bet you say that to all of the foster carers.
I'm going to have to watch about the other ones now.
I know, you're going to have to be careful.
But we talk about those who think about fostering, and you self-proclaim as an empty nester, don't you? So maybe tell us a little bit more about that.
The reason why I keep doing it, and people keep saying to me, why haven't you retired? Why don't you give up? And because I get as much out of fostering as the young people give to me. And I have a daughter who is now left home, went to university, and so she doesn't need me as much, but I need to be needed, and it actually fulfills a need in me to feel that I'm needed by somebody and I'm doing some good in society at the same time.
Oh, it's so lovely, isn't it, when you hear stories like that? It always makes me smile whenever you tell me that. I love it. Yeah,
definitely.
And teenagers are my bag.
Yeah.
I love teenagers. A lot of people don't like the idea of doing fostering with teenagers. They're scared about teenagers, but they give me so much joy. They really do.
Yeah.
I mean, they are funny, they're entertaining. There is a definite need for young teenagers to be looked after properly. And I love it. I absolutely love it.
I saw an amazing it's a terrible stat really, but about the need for teenage foster carers. And I think 40% of all children looking for sort of homes and families are teenagers and 13 upwards. So there is such a massive need. And we speak to a lot of people, or we speak to people on the phone and like, oh, I just want to foster babies, which is why it's so important to think about like the full age range of children that do need a loving environment.
I mean, I do mostly 16 up. I do anything from 12 to 18. And I thought when I started out, because I had a young daughter, that teenagers would be the thing I wanted to do. I would always say, though, if you were thinking about doing teenagers, don't have a child the same age as your own children.
Okay.
That can cause a bit of conflict. So that would be something to think about. But anybody older or anybody younger will bring something to the home.
Absolutely, I think so. I remember working with a foster family, and they had young children of their own, and they started fostering teenagers, and it was just beautiful seeing kind of the teenagers that they were looking after playing with their younger children, and the younger children, when we were like at events, would kind of seek out that young person, and the relationship that really formed. But it also allowed the older young person to almost be a little bit like a child and be able to kind of play games
and do the things that they may have missed out on in their own lives. Well, my daughter still is in contact with some of the young people that we've looked after. In fact, you don't know this, but yesterday I got a message from one of my first foster children.
Oh, amazing.
Who left me when he was 18. He went off to Gloucester Uni and he then did a master's. Got engaged.
Oh,
and
amazing.
Just wonderful to hear. Just wonderful to hear. And it's those sort of moments where you think, I have been a part of that journey for that young person. My daughter, as I say, is still in touch with him. So
and that's beautiful. Like he wanted you to know like what happened, keeping you updated.
Exactly. Yeah.
You know, it's obviously something really important for them to be able to share with you. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful.
I know.
Yeah, what a wonderful time as well. That was
it was
unscripted.
Perfect timing.
Yeah. Oh, that's so nice. And so you talked about your daughter there. How has she found fostering? How have you found fostering as part of the household?
I think she appreciated more actually what she had at home and what other young people didn't have. And the fact that she is still in touch with a lot of the young people, she obviously got something out of it.
You talk there about kind of some of the more challenging times, and I think one of the things is really important to be kind of open and kind of honest and transparent about fostering. And you know, there are some amazing ups and highs and fantastic kind of moments, but there are some difficulties and some challenges.
And I think one of the, particularly with teenagers, one of the problems is people say, oh, because they're in care. It isn't. It's because they're teenagers. All teenagers are difficult. You know, it's nothing to do with their circumstances. It's just unfortunate that the young people that I look after, as well as having to negotiate all the other problems of being a teenager, the hormones, the relationships and everything else that goes with it, they also have to manage being uprooted from their home, their environment, going into an unknown environment with people that they don't know, whose rules they don't understand. And I just think, you know, the resilience you must have as a young person to be able to do that. You know, my hat goes off to, I mean, I'm in awe of these young people and how they manage to cope so well in such difficult circumstances.
And like you say, being a teenager, there's all sorts of things kind of going on for them. They're navigating the world in so many different ways.
Absolutely.
And also being kind of looked after. There's additional kind of challenges and complexities. But most of the things that are happening is experiencing their friendships, their kind of peer relationships, challenges with school. Actually, that's no different than a lot of teenagers.
No different to
you know, I look back on my teenage years and I think, oh yeah, okay. You know, we were talking on the car in the car on the way out, weren't we, about someone who'd said it'd only be a few friends for a party and it ended up a massive gathering. And I was like, oh yeah, I remember doing that as well.
No, I get that. It's such a period of change, isn't it? For everyone. Regardless if you throw in like situational changes as well, it's going to be a melting pot of different things that so that's why it's so nice to hear the perspectives of people like yourself and Joe who do a slightly older age group of fostering, because actually there is such a need for that and such a need for an understanding and a better understanding of teenagers and young adults as a whole.
But I often find when I'm talking to other foster carers who go, oh, I couldn't do teenagers, I go, just try it once. And quite often they'll come back to me and say, actually, you know, it's much more fulfilling and they enjoyed it a lot more than they thought that they would. So, you know, I would never dismiss the idea of doing teenagers, even if you think, oh, I prefer toddlers, which I wouldn't. I really wouldn't.
No, that's entirely fair. So, I mean, so taking you right back to the start of your fostering journey, how did you do it? How did you decide to choose to go local council? What made you pick that?
Right. I've only ever gone for local authority because I don't want to see these young people actually being profited from, which is something that can happen. So I know that the local authority don't profit from the fostering, and that was really important to me. Also, it keeps the young people local. And as a teacher, I know how important the education is. And to uproot them from school along with everything else would just be yet another hurdle for these young people to cope with. So if we can keep them in-house, keep them local, keep them with their friendship groups and their school, then, you've got a better chance of keeping them on the straight and narrow and, looking after them properly. Also, local authority has a lot more training and support for foster carers than other organisations. And that was important to me because I'm a single carer, so I don't have a massive network of people around me. So for me, it was very important to have that support from the local authority. And I've certainly felt that over the years. I wouldn't still be doing it if I didn't feel that I was being supported in what I did.
How long have you been fostering for?
14 years.
14 years.
Yes.
Oh, amazing.
And I have had, and I counted them because I know you've asked me before how many. I actually I've had 38 young people, different young people. I've had some more than once. So there've been many more through my doors, but 38 different young people in 14 years.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
So you, your family, your daughter, supporting 38 young people at different points in their life.
Yeah.
How does it feel when you say that number? How
I
does
know.
it feel? Yeah.
It was amazing to think that there were that many. And, whenever you do fostering, you are touching those young people's lives in a positive way. So, to think that I can make a positive difference to 38 young individuals is just amazing.
And in terms of those 38, so talk about the types of fostering you might have got involved in. Is it a bit of a range? Is it more?
It has been an absolute range. So I started off doing full-time, so what was called long-term fostering.
Cool.
So I would have young people until they turned 18.
Cool.
Now it's slightly different. You can have them beyond 18, but at the time they had to go at 18. And I think that's such a shame.
Yes.
I mean, I almost think it's criminal that young people who've not had the support then have to leave home at 18. They're just not ready for it. Then I've done short stay, and a lot of short stay, and that can be anything like a weekend to, a few months. And then I do what used to be called respite.
Okay.
And that was a regular arrangement. So I've had a lot of young people who've come back to me on a regular basis over the years. And then my biggest thing, and I think that a lot of people are frightened of, I do emergency fostering. So the emergency EDT fostering is where you'll get a knock at the door at 2 a.m, and there's a young person standing there, probably with a couple of policemen, and they're being welcomed into your home. And I think the thing that people are worried about is very little about those young people when they turn up on your doorstep. But they are probably the most needy because they've probably been taken from home, that they are confused, they're angry. Very often they're angry, but they're not angry with you. I mean, you are the one person who's providing them with a bed for the night and, probably a pizza in the oven. And so that's the start of their journey in care for a lot of them. And I love that. I like the unpredictability, and you have to think on your feet. You have to be quite flexible.
Yeah, it's building those relationships for someone who's had, like you say, often ripped away or some not due to their own cause or something, but they've had to, something's happened, they've had to and it's just so important, like you say, in those early stages, just to be so, like you say, welcome in, let them settle in. It takes a minute, they're going to be confused often, like you say, it's a change, so it's a lot.
And I think there's something about knowing that what you're seeing or what they're presenting isn't the true kind of feeling, and it's giving the time, giving the patience, and having that understanding that they just need safety right now. As an EDT carer, emergency carer, that is the thing, you're providing that safety.
Yes.
But they've been in potentially, some traumatic situation.
Absolutely.
Or no one's kind of voluntarily wanting to move children late at night, and so there's that understanding that you kind of give them, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that safe space, safe space, and safe faith.
I love it.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's exactly that.
And I think there's a lot around. No, I've lost it now, so we'll go on to something else.
That's right. But I think what's really important, you talk about actually fostering isn't someone's journey as a foster carer isn't stable. It doesn't follow a linear path. People have different interests. You might want to try different types of fostering, and it's super important actually to recognise that what's right for one person and their family and their household, etc., isn't necessarily right for someone else.
Yeah.
And also, what people may have misconceptions about what they think fostering is all about, and you might think, oh, if I rent my property, I can't be a foster carer. That's not true.
Yeah.
I thought when I started fostering, I was in my 50s when I started fostering, so I thought I was too old. I worked full time. I had a young child at home on my own.
Yeah.
So I thought there were lots of reasons why I shouldn't be a foster carer, and yet none of that really mattered. So you can work around it. And so there may be reasons that you think that you might not make a good foster carer, but actually there are lots of ways, even to the extent now that you don't necessarily have to have a spare bedroom. It used to be you had to have a spare bedroom. If you are doing babies that are not going to be in a separate room, you don't have to have a spare bedroom.
Yeah. And you're right. I think people think about it as like, oh, I need to be the perfect person, or it needs to be the perfect time. Life doesn't work like that. The world doesn't. Fostering also doesn't work like that.
No.
Actually, just have a conversation, unpick sort of your circumstances, and see. It might not be right. Might not feel the perfect time, but actually, you might not understand.
And
I
often think people think because they've maybe had difficulties in their past that would be a barrier to becoming a foster carer. If anything, I would say it was an advantage, because you have much more empathy with young people if you understand the struggles they might have had to go through.
And so you talk about some of the misconceptions and surprises there. Anything else sort of spring to mind as, oh, I didn't think fostering would be that or be like that? Or
I think the biggest surprise is a lot of people don't realise you get paid.
Okay.
Absolutely. The number of people, when you talk to them and you're talking about fostering, and that they think it's a voluntary thing, and of course it isn't. You do get paid by the local authority to do this. For me, it was the amount of support. That there is an awful lot of support there. There's a lot of training that you have to do. There's mandatory training you have to do, but there's loads of training out there that you can do. There are support groups, so there are people like yourself, because sometimes you might, particularly as a single carer, you might feel isolated because you're managing something on your own in your home. But to have other people around in a support group that do the same thing, you can go and you can talk to them and you can mine them for advice, and you get to be known. There's a small group in the local authority I work for that do teenagers. I know all the teenage carers, so if I've got a problem or if I would to suddenly have an emergency and have to go somewhere or do something, I've got people I could ring up and say, I need somebody to look after my young person. So, there's a lot of support out there for you. You're not out there on your own.
And I think one of the other things that you kind of have both kind of touched on as well is about the fostering journey, but about how it can change dependent on how your situation changes.
Yes.
So you've talked about all the different types of fostering that you've done, potentially as your life has changed.
That's exactly what it was. I mean, I'm now slightly older and looking to retirement eventually. So I want to spend a bit more time with my family and with friends, and I can still foster and do that. At one time it was all about looking after the children for as long as possible, and now it's about doing what I can when I can. But the local authority appreciates that I'm not there 24/7.
And I think actually something we talk about when we talk about the prospective foster care is actually you can still live and be a foster carer. There's no reason why one should stop. I know we talk, you just come back from holiday and stuff like that. People don't realise actually you can have breaks. It's not 365 for that, isn't it? So
yes. And you don't have to you can take your foster children on holiday with you, but you don't have to. There are mechanisms where, people like myself would look after a child for a couple of weeks while you go away with your family. And I think that's really important. I think having time with your biological family is very important. And with the local authority, it's possible to do that, go away, have a bit of time, and still foster.
I think it's also that there's often times when children who are looked after aren't able to go on holiday with the families for a number of different reasons, including kind of legal parameters.
Yes.
But, there are also, children when they are with their long-term families who do go on all of their family holidays and are kind of included there. But on those times when it isn't practically possible, having to go to a kind of a short-term carer that they already know, someone they've maybe been to before, ideally something like Mockingbird,
I was just going to mention that. Yes, I mean, Mockingbird was set up particularly for that sort of arrangement, so that a number of 10 foster carers would get to know each other very well, would have regular meetings with one another. And so the young people themselves would get to know other families. And so when they were put in short breaks, then they knew the family, they knew the setup. And that seems to be working extremely successfully at the moment.
One of the things that you mentioned earlier, you were talking about foster carers receive kind of a payment for fostering. And I just wanted to go back to that because it's something that we haven't actually spoken about on the podcast before.
Right.
And I think it's really good that you've kind of brought that up. And I thought it'd be a good opportunity for us to just kind of break it down a little bit, really. Now, obviously, every local authority, how they kind of pay their foster carers is different. But typically there's two main themes, isn't there? One is around payment for the child and additional expenses. So it might be around birthdays.
You do get extra money for a child's birthday, for Christmas.
School clothing.
Prom dresses. They get money for things. I say prom dresses, but prom outfits, depending on who it is and what they want to wear. So yes, there's additional money for things like that, and there is money for the child, and there's obviously money, because they are eating and using electricity and all that. So there's money for that as well.
Yeah, so it's typically broken down into kind of two payments. One's the age-related allowance.
Yes.
So dependent on their age of that child, the government set a kind of a minimum of what that should be, but every local authority will be slightly different. And then there's the foster carer allowance. And within that would also include some additional costings for kind of the home. It's all broken down slightly differently. But then there's stages at which, dependent on years of experience, dependent on completion of training.
Absolutely. So when you start out, you're on band 1, and as soon as you've done your first year, the money will automatically go up. But when you get more experienced, and possibly taking on more challenging young people, you can also go up the bands, and so you get paid more for your experience and your skills.
And that's, it's about kind of recognising the support that you're kind of providing children. It's about being able to kind of recognise also the additional costings kind of within the home. It does vary all the way through, but I just thought it was important for everyone to kind of know about the foster carer payments.
Definitely, and we've talked about it as well. Some people think it's a volunteer role, but actually there's loads of other fringe benefits as well, which I think are becoming more common. For example, some are working with local councils for council tax discounts and various things like that. So actually it's really important for every household to understand financially what it means for them, because it's not a volunteer role. And like we said, it's important that actually people recognise that it is a role, it is a profession, and foster carers are rewarded for that.
Okay, so back to kind of caring for, kind of thinking about caring for teenagers. Have you got any kind of anecdotes or any kind of stories that you'd like to share with us about caring for teenagers?
The positive ones. I mean, the young man who I mentioned who's just got engaged, he was a challenge when he first came, and I'd said before I started fostering that I would only take girls because I had a teenage daughter at home, and I thought it wasn't appropriate to bring young teenage boys into the home. And I remember very distinctly sitting in Sainsbury's car park on a Saturday shop and getting a phone call from a social worker saying, we've got this young man. And I went, well, you can stop there because I don't do boys. And they went, yeah, I know you don't do boys. However, I think this would be a good fit. Now, it was somebody who knew me very well, knew my setup. And I said, well, I'll give it a go. I'll do a 28-day placement. And if it works, great. If it doesn't, then, you'll have to find somewhere else. So this young man came to me on a 28-day placement, and he stayed with me for about 2 years until he turned 18 and went off to university. And it was very successful.
So what at the moment, so you're an EDT carer.
Yes.
So how does that kind of work? Are you on like a rota?
There's 2 types of EDT. That you can go on a rota where your bed is sort of held over for any emergency that might turn up, and you are paid a retainer for that. And so any child that needs a bed on that night, you are the first port of call.
So, I mean, thinking back, was it 38 children, young people you've had? Yeah.
Yes.
So, thinking back to that 38, what are some of the skills that they've taught you maybe along the way? What do you think that you've learned that you never would have otherwise? And that's a tricky question, I know.
It is a tricky question. I think people don't tend to think of teenagers as having a sense of humour, and they so do. They so do. And, that's lovely.
Yeah.
And that was one of the big surprises for me. And also people say, oh, teenagers don't talk to you. Well, they will if you just give them the time and the space to express themselves. They will come and talk to you if they think you're actually listening. And that has to be properly listening. So you're not there listening whilst cooking. You're sat down with them, listening to what they're trying to tell you. They will come and talk to you. So those misconceptions about teenagers and how they won't ever talk to you. And for those who do find it difficult talking, then you find other ways. So sitting in a car is a very good way of talking to a teenager. They're not facing you, and so they're looking out, and they are unburdening themselves, and you are concentrating on driving, but actually you are listening to every word that they're saying. So you just find ways of doing it. The thing that frustrates me most, I'm somebody who goes to bed quite early, and you can guarantee if they want to tell you something really meaningful, it is going to be 11:30 at night.
Yeah.
And you've got to be up at 6 a.m, and they'll come down and go, I just need to tell you something. And then you're there for 2 hours. But I mean, that's the nature of the job. Yeah. That is the nature of the job. And you would do the same for your own children. So why would you not do that for a young child in care?
Yeah. And that little bit you just said there is absolutely hits nail on the head. I think when we speak to foster carers like yourself, it's like we're treating these people all the same. Like we would do this for our children. Yes. Why wouldn't we do this for another who we are looking after and supporting? Yes. And they recognise that as well. I think, like you say, being there for them is a really good way to start bringing those barriers down and opening it up and making it feel more homely, because they feel like they can then go to you with something. And that's it, and you'll be there for them.
And they often haven't had that before. They may not have had that in their own home. There may be many reasons why that doesn't happen. And, they will be very wary of adults, because adults have let them down throughout their life so far. So, you're another adult, they're expecting you to let them down. And I feel it's my job to prove that not all adults let them down.
And you're finding, ways to communicate that work for that child or
Yes,
that young person
yes.
that's with you. Like you say, if they don't want to talk, maybe we'll see what happens when we go for a drive. Maybe we'll see what happens when it's, 10 o'clock at night and we're making our last cup of hot chocolate before we're going to bed. But you try different things,
Yes.
don't you? To try and help them to feel safe so that they are able to open up and begin to talk.
Yeah. And you were saying about things that surprise me. I mean, I shouldn't have been surprised. I mean, I've been teaching for a very long time, but one of the things that you've got to be aware of is that they will often come into your home and they've had terrible experiences and they've had to negotiate those. And so on the surface, they look very adult for their age.
Yes.
But underneath, often, they've missed out on a lot of caring as a younger child. And so they may be chronologically older than their they may be older than their age, but actually intellectually they're not. And you've got to, I've had a child asking me to tuck him up in bed, and that came as a shock to me because it's not something I usually do with teenagers, but that was where he was. And you've just, as you say, you've got to read the child as they come in and see what works for them.
So future.
Yeah, what's next? What's next for Linda, the foster carer?
What's next for me? Keep doing what I'm doing.
Yeah.
I mean, I love what I do. I get so much out of it that I can't imagine in the near future. When I talk about retirement, I'm thinking of giving up teaching rather than
giving up. Well clarified, yeah.
Giving up fostering. Because I love it. As I said before, it satisfies a need in me. And whilst there are young people out there who need me, then I'm out there to be there for them.
I love that.
Yeah, I think well clarified. In Gloucestershire would be on the phone otherwise. They'd
Yeah.
have fears. Yeah, don't worry, guys.
Brilliant, what have we
Safe.
done?
Yeah.
Okay, so what would you kind of say to anybody that's considering fostering?
Do it. Try it. Yes.
Yeah.
You can make such a difference, and that feeling that you are making a difference to these young people's lives is so important. And you won't know whether you can foster unless you try it. So get out there, find out about it, start on that journey of becoming a foster carer, and see if it's for you. And I didn't know that 14 years later I would still be doing this. But I love it, and I can't imagine my life without it.
Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you for joining us.
It's been amazing, honestly. Like hearing about all the different kind of fostering that you've done through over the years, and all the young people that you've kind of looked after. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Do you want my story about when I thought I'd failed?
I think that's a good way to end on, 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So you don't always know that you've been successful. As I say, often they do come back to you years later and you realise you've made a difference. But there was one young man particularly that I honestly thought I had failed. And I was very upset. The placement broke down. He left me. I didn't hear anything from him. And then one day I was at some training and I looked at my phone and there was a text from this young man saying, just wanted to see how you were. I've been past the house many times. I didn't think you'd want to see me, but I just wanted to wish you a happy Christmas. So I text straight back saying, why would I not want to see you? And when I got home, there was a box of chocolate biscuits on the doorstep from him. And that was amazing. Since then, I have met up with him and we went out to lunch, and he's with a partner. He's got a baby. He's doing really, really well. And this is somebody who really was making very, very poor choices in his life and could well have ended up in a very different place.
That's made me quite emotional, that story. I just think it's really beautiful that one of the things that stands out for me there is you were thinking, actually looking inward, what have I done? Like, I feel like I have failed, like, questioning yourself, and really thinking what you could have kind of done differently. And actually, for this young person, it was obviously something significant that you had done. It might not have been exactly have ended in exactly the way that either of you would have liked or have wanted, but the fact that you've been able to kind of reconnect, it's just beautiful.
It's amazing, And everyone who you've told that story around with me, because we've done plenty of things like this together before. I still remember the first time when we spoke on the phone and you told me about it. I was stood just outside a hockey match down in Torquay, and you told me, I was like, I need a minute. And that takes a lot for me, I think, as everyone will tell you. But it's so lovely. And what I love about when we talk is you talk about the challenges, but actually it's the way you frame it and how you sort of say you've learned from it, and actually what we can take from it, and how fostering does have challenges. It's not all plain sailing, and I think every foster care we speak to would say the same thing, but it's what we learn and how we grow and how we reframe those internally and as for the next challenge we face. I think that's so important.
Yeah, and using the support network that's around us, using our village that's there.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. That was absolutely beautiful. Thank you. Okay.
Wow.
That's it for today.
That's it. I'm back. We've got through it again. Didn't leave you on your own today.
No.
And thank you so much for coming down and joining us. It's been it's been a pleasure.
I've enjoyed it too. Thank you.
It's been amazing. Thank you.
And thank you to everyone for tuning in and putting up with me and Carrie again this week. We will be back with the next one.
Yeah, we'll be back in a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
We get planning our next one, get thinking about who's going to be joining us.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of ideas. So as soon as we get any kind of confirmation, we'll get that on our socials for you all. And you'll know what's kind of up and coming. But yeah, Linda, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.